Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we're Masechtas Bava Kama Daf Mem Hey. We're going to begin on the bottom of Mem Dalet Beis by the new Mishnah. Says the Masnisin, Shershehu Yoitze V'Sakel V'Kdishu Balav Enu Mukdosh. If you have an ox that is about to go to be killed because it was a wild animal and it killed a human being, and then the owner decides, what a wonderful time to be makdish this animal, enu mukdash. We say it does not work. And the reason is because this animal is asur b'hana. You cannot derive any benefit from it. Shachto, let's say in the event that he decides to shech this animal, again this is after Gemar Din, so then besara asur. Then the meat of this animal is also asur, again because it's asur b'hana. V'im adshlo nigmar dinoi hikdisho balav. Let's say the owner was makdish it, but it was before the Gemar Din, before the verdict was reached. Then in that situation, mukdosh, it actually works. And therefore, b'im shachto b'sar mutter. The animal's not asur b'hana, so therefore, technically, if you would have shechted before the Gemar Din, then the meat is mutter. So we have the Arba Shaimrim, the bar renter, or the person who's watching the item either for free or for pay, was given over to them. The shomer takes the owner's place. That's the din. Says Rashi, nagach. So it was given over to the shomer before it gored. Okay. So again, Rashi says, this din of the Arba Shaimrim is totally separate from the rest. Tanurban, says the Gemara, shor shehemis. So you have this shor that's to be killed. Before the Gemar Din, Machrai, the Baal decides not to be makdish, but he decides to sell this animal. So the din is mach. So the din is, Itaka is a good machira. Hikdishai. Let's say he decides to, and Rashi says, hula ridya, for plowing purposes. Or let's say hikdisho mukdosh. If he was makdish this animal, it also works. And therefore, because of that, Rashi says that if someone gets enough from this animal, from that point on, there's a din mi'ila. Shachtai basar mutter. If you shachta, the meat is mutter, again, because it was before Gemar Din, hechzir shaymul beis balav muchser. If the shaman gives it back to the beis balav, then it's considered to be given, even though basically this animal is being scrutinized by Beis Din. Says Rashi, Keshechshiro shor malyahu. It's keilu, like he gave a shor malya. Even though the truth is, it's moments from a Gemar Din, in which will be asur b'hana, nonetheless, the Arba Shaimrim, they can give it back. However, Mishenigmar dinoi, once there's already been a Gemar Din on this, Marcharein and Marchor, Hekdishu and Mukdosh, Shachtu Basar Asar, Hechsir Shemel Beis Balav, Enu Mukser. Again, since it's like a dead ox, so therefore it's not considered to be a proper Masira, giving over to the owner. Now we have the interesting sheet of Rabbi Yaakov. Rabbi Yaakov Omer, no, Af Mishenig Mardino Hechsir Shemel Abal Mukser. According to Rabbi Yaakov, he disagrees with this one point and says that if the Arba Shomrim do give it back, even though it's already after Gemar Din, it actually is a good returning. So Lema Bal Kamifli. So how do they argue? So maybe this is the Machlok, the Rabbanan Savri, Ein Oimrim B'Isuri Hana Hari Shachal Fanecha. When it comes to something which is also Hana, you can't just say Hari Shachal Fanecha. So, for example, if Rashi says "V'nafkimina legazel chametz of avulav haPesach de'achzira ena mukser." So, let's say you have someone who stole chametz, and now Pesach is over. You decide to give it back. Now, this chametz is asur b'hana, but it looks like good food. But you can say "Hari shachal fanecha." Here, take it. This is yours. But the truth is, at this point, now it's asur b'hana. So, is that considered to be a situation of returning that which you stole? Or in this case, because it's asur b'hana, can the shemer give it back? Rav Yaakov Samer Aminu Yisrael Hana Hari Shulchal V'Necha. Even after Gemar Din, the shemer can give it back. Samer Rab no. The Kol Yam Amrin Yisrael Hana Hari Shulchal V'Necha. Yitaka could always say that. You can always say Hari Shulchal V'Necha. How do we know this? Because the Im Kain, if it wasn't for the fact that if the Taka would argue, then Nifak Indian Chametz B'Pesach, then you should talk about the case of Chametz B'Pesach. That would be a better machlokus. Why would we be talking about this case of Arba Shaimrim? Mention the classical case of chametz b'Pesach, says Rashi. Why? Because it's brought down, as we'll see actually later on in this Masechta, it says you can give it back. You can give it back. This is the chametz after Pesach. Also before the Gemar Din, you can give it back. However, once the Gemar Din has taken place, you can't say this. Why? The Rabbanan say that he could give it back to the owner by chametz she'arvel of Pesach. Dafka, says Rashi. Why? Because the isur came by itself. You can't say this is nothing. So you didn't actually do anything. It just, through time, it became asur b'hana. So in that situation, you could give it back, even according to the Rabbanan. Avol hacha, when it comes to a shore, mishum hachi amrin Rabbanan in a mukser, the amalei at pasche pachte latari b'chulu that has zeka to be a dayim. Here, by giving the shore to the even to the basin, we're going to see you've damaged me be a dayim, since you should have given it to me. So we're going to see that in a second. Anyway, so el hacha begarmim dinu shel shor shlo b'fanav k'miflagi. The whole machlokas is if a person can have gemar din with not in front of the owner. The Rabbanan Savri in garmin dinu shel shor el b'fanav. You have to have the owner there. The armulei, because the owner can say to the shomer, ahadarte nihili, if you would have given this shore back to me, havi ma'arkana le la'agma, I could have brought it to the swamp. And therefore, basically, I could have hid it out of sight. So this way, there would never be a gemar din on this animal. Because in order to be able to have a gemar din, you need to be able to actually have the shore brought to the basin. So the shomer brought it to the basin. But the reality is, by here, the giving of the shore to the basin, you've actually damaged me biyadayim, since I could have, you could have given it back to me, and I could have hid it, basically. Bahashta ata fashte l'taroi, since you gave over this my ox to the basin, biyada d'loyechilna l'ishtuye dina b'hadei. So basically, what's being said again over here is the interesting nafkamina. Even according to the Rabbanan will only say harshal chavanecha works by an isur hana is dafka when it comes to something like chametz, because it happened b'meila. However, if you did it be a dayim, the fact that you did something which caused me a monetary loss be a dayim, so in that situation the shomer cannot give it back. Rav Yaakov said no. Garmim dinu shel shor shel b'fanav. Actually, you could have a gemar din even not in front of the ox. Yarmulei soif at the end. Migmar havi gamri le ladina. What's the difference? You would have had the gemar din anyway. Says Rashi Hilchach. It wouldn't have made any difference. Okay, fine. The shomer brought it to the basin. The Metzias is that even if it wasn't there could have still been a gemar din. So my time in the Rabbanon. So why did the Rabbanon say the tack of the shore has to be there? Hashor yisakav v'gambav yumos. Kamisas abam kach misas ashor. Mal balam, just like the owner, difneihem, when he's being judged, it's in front of the court. Ashor b'fanav. So too the ox itself has to be in front. Rav Yaakov, no. Bishlam abalim b'nei taininhu. The reason why the owner should be there is because he could have a claim. He has a mouth. He could say something to get out of it. El ashor bark tanasahu. Ashor doesn't have the ability to make a taina. So therefore, for that reason, even if the shore is not there, it doesn't make any difference. Question 11. Mishanigmar dinoi v'chul hechziru shema beis baal of enu muchser Rav Yaakov oimer muchser. So b'mai k'meflagi v'mai leika l'meimer nebibli imar aminu b'sir hana harishal fanecha. So again, they argue whether or not the gemar din could take place even if the shore is not in the basin. So you can't say they're arguing about isuri hanav harishal fanecha, because the Rabban will hold by chametz b'Pesach, chametz shavel b'Pesach, that we do say harshal chavanecha, and therefore obviously that's in this. But in this case, he says no because it's not mamela, it's biyadayim. TA3. B'man necha Rabbi Yaakov Rabbanan l'maskana im garmim dina shashor b'fanav lo. So basically it's the same thing, but he breaks it down. So according to the Rabbanan, he holds kamisas abam kach misas ashar. And therefore, because of that, just like the person has to be present, so too the shore has to be present. Or he says, no, the shore doesn't have to be present because it's not shaykh for this shore to be able to make a taina. So therefore, obviously, it can be, the Gemara din can be done even shlo b'fnei hashor. Why do you need the ox there? What is the ox going to contribute to being there? It means nothing. Okay. So it's interesting. As far as some machlokes over there. All right. Weiter. Tanurba. Arba nichnasu tachas abalim. So he said there's 4 people in which the 4 shomer that will take over the owner's place. So there's Arba nichnasu tachas abalim. Ve'elohein. Obviously we know who these are. The shomer chinam, someone who's being watching it for nothing. Vashoyel, a borrower. Nice is sachar, someone's watching it for pay. Vasaychan, a renter. So hargu tamin neharagin ubeturin min a. So let's say in this situation, the animal is a tam, and we say that it's killed. As we know, the tam is killed if it kills. However, there's no din kaifer. As we mentioned before, there is no din kaifer by a tam. Moadin, this is going to be the focus over here. When it comes to an animal as a muad, neheragin, also it's killed. However, mishalmin as a kaifer. They do pay the kaifer. V'chayav l'hachser demei shor l'balav. And they do have to pay back the value of the shore to the owner. Chutz b'shem. When it comes to a shem, that is where the exception is made, where it's not necessary. Samri hechidam. I don't understand what happened over here. If the animal was watched properly, then they should be completely potter because they didn't do anything wrong. If the animal was not properly guarded, we should say that the shemachinam is also chayiv. So how do we understand this? Okay, so when it says kul nami niftaru, it says medemei shor bar mishoyel the hanusim hein. Okay, so Amri Hachmai Skinan did not shmir pechusa, vo not shmir meula. So what it means is there was a shmira, but it wasn't a great shmira. So shemachinam. So what is a shmira pechusa? So Rashi says, Dela shechayil lamad baruch matsuya. You at least close the door that under normal conditions that door wouldn't have flown open. But under extreme circumstances, the door would not have done much. So that's considered to be at least a shmira pechusa. So we break it down like this. Shermachinam, when it comes to someone who is watching it and not being paid, kalsol shmirasai. So we say that his shmir is completed. Says Rashi, the level hits chazik b'shmirasai, v'dai bekach v'lav pshiehi. This is not considered pshia because he did lock it up. It was just a delas in which was able to withstand a ruach matsuya. And therefore, that's a shmir pechusa, but that's enough for a shemachinam. It's not even being paid. However, hanach will call shmirasan. However, when it comes to these other cases, the shmira has not been completed. Says Rashi, shechayavin hayu. That's why they're chayiv l'schazik b'shmira. So they should have been more careful with their shmira. Shehi shomer l'balav upshihi midi dehavi agneva aveda. This is considered because it wasn't a shmira me'ola. It wasn't a strong shmira. So therefore, because of that, it's considered to be an element of pshia. Hanach will call shmirasan. So Amri, come on, who's this like? Ikra Meir. How do we understand it? So if it like the sheet the Rameir as we continue to mem hayam and beis. So what does Rameir say? So in Bomatzia, in Perek HaShoyel, obviously, it's also in the Arba Sharmim. There's a machlokas what the status of a soicher is. So according to Rameir, he holds that a renter has the same status as a shemachinam. So if that's true, then lisni chutz m'shemachinam v'hasoicher. So then why do we say only chutz from a shemachinam if he holds a soicher has the same din as a shemachinam? So we should include both of them. That's kol sol shmirasa. V'im, and if it is ki Rabbi Yehuda. The Amr Soicher K'neisis Sacher Dami, that is taka like the din of a Neisis Sacher, Nisni Chutz M'Shemachinam, just a Chutz M'Shemachinam, which is what it does say, and then it should say V'Kulon B'Muadin Peturin L'Inin Kaifer, and all of them are considered to be muad, and they're potter, not chayiv, regarding the dinim of Kaifer. Says Rashi, Heich the Shomer Shmira Pechusa. If you did this inadequate shmira Amay Mishalman Kaifer. Why do you have to pay Kaifer? Ha'aymer Rabbi Huda Muad Sagli B'Shmir Pechusa. According to him, he holds that you only need a Shmir Pechusa. The Shmir Pechusa is enough. So you actually wouldn't be Chayiv Kaifer according to him. The only Shmir is literally with a knife, which is a fancy way of saying that you're going to be paying Kaifer because it needs the ultimate level of Shmira. When it comes to a renter, several Rabbi Huda, Yom Seicher Kenaisi Sachar Dami. That a renter is like the Naisi Sachar, which is the reason why you're going to be Chayiv. And therefore only the Shemachinim is going to be Potter. So if it's like the Sheet of Rab Meir, so then why does it also include in the category not just the Shemachinim but also Seicher? So Machalif Rabba Baravua Vatani. So it's as he learned. And you should insert it like this. Seicher Ketzad. Mishalom. How does a renter pay? Rameir Oimer Kishomer Sachar. Rehuda Oimer Kishamachinam. So you see, Taka, it is a machlokas. This is why the Seicher is not mentioned together with the Shemachinam, since only a Shemachinam is potter from paying back the owner. Rabbi Huda Oimer Kishamachinam. Rabbi Lezer Maser Shayro Shemachinam. Hizik Chayev Huzik Potter. If you gave over short to Shemachinam, the ox damages your Chayev. If the ox gets damaged, then you're Potter. So Amri Hechidami Edi Kabale Shmiras Nezakov. If he accepted upon himself even the Shmira of making sure that the ox does not get damaged, feel Huzik Nami Chayev. So he should be Chayev. Ed Deloy Kabale Shmiras Nezakov. If he wasn't, then I feel Hizik Nami Liftar. He should be Potter also if the ox does damage. So Maravel Oyom Shekibul of Shmiras Nezakov. He actually was accepted upon himself the Shmira for damages. So if that's the case, then l'chayra, even if the animal, the ox gets damaged, you should still be chayav. So v'hachman skin kagain shehikar boishahu nagchon. It was already recognizable that this was a wild animal. Ustama de milsa doi ozol ihu umazek achrina kabale. So the stam, the milsa doi ozol ihu, who's not going to go and mazik and to not be mazik another animal that was makabel, because he knew that this was a wild animal. So since this is a wild animal, he took upon himself that he will make sure this animal does not damage. It never crossed his mind that the opposite would happen, that this animal would end up being damaged. Says Rashi, basically, it never was able to demonstrate that it was going to ever be damaged. It was such a wild animal that you would never have thought that this was an animal that was going to be damaged, but rather an animal that will damage. And therefore, because of that, that's why Rabbi Yehuda says, or Rabbi Lezer says, that in this situation, the Shemer Chinam is only going to be chayiv when the ox damages, because it is such a wild animal that it should have been anticipated to watch it for that, but not the other way around. Question 12. Amar Belezer, Masa Shel Shemachinam, he's a chayiv husik potter. So the answer is, there's a wild animal. He just wanted to accept upon himself he's not going to let this animal damage anyone, because he knew it was a very wild animal, and more than likely that's what it's going to do. But the other way around was not something in which he would have anticipated. Okay. All right. Weiter. Says the next Mishnah. We're gonna finish the parak today. Says the Masnisin. Kashroi benolav. Again, kashroi balav b'moiseira. Let's say you have the owner and he ties this animal up with a moiseira, a ring. V'no b'fan of karoi, and you lock it up in a proper manner. Yotzav hizik, and nonetheless it still goes out and does damage. It says Rashi, Hainu shmir pechusa, that you did a shmir pechusa with this animal. So echad tam v'echad muad chayiv divrei meir. So our mayor is of the opinion, and let's look at question TB4. Ezu shmir chayiv atayr l'shor hamuad. So this is right up our alley over here. So when we're dealing with according to Rameir, he says when it comes to a mu'id, according to Rameir, the din is that you're going to be chayiv for a shmira pechusa. Okay. Weiter. Rabbi Huda Eimer tam chayiv a mu'id pater. Interestingly enough, Rabbi Huda holds that when it comes to a mu'id, it does not need a shmira me'ula, it just needs a shmira pechusa. If there's a shmira pechusa, it's enough, even though it sounds counterintuitive. But that's the din. Shenemar v'lo yishmerena ba'alav. Now this pasuk is referring to a mu'id. It says you didn't watch it. The shamor huzeh. So therefore, it's clear that according to this, it's only when there was no shmira. Even a shmir pechusa is when you're chayav, which is mashmei. When it comes to a mu'id, even though it's hard to understand why, when it comes to a mu'id, as long as there's a shmir pechusa, then you're going to be potter. Rabbi Lezer Omer ein lo shmira ela sakin. The only shmira is with a knife, says Rashi. The shosh machlokas b'davar. So it's a three-way machlokas. This is I understand it, which is another way of saying question T before. Rameir b'shmir pechusa chayav uva potter. That when it comes to a shmir pechusa, you're chayiv. If it's me'ula, you're going to be potter. Rabbi Huda be'pechusa nami potter. Rabbi Lezer be'me'ula nami chayiv. So it's a three-way machlokas. TB4. Let's see how he writes it. Rameir shmira me'ula. Rabbi Huda shmira pechusa. Rabbi Lezer ein lo shmira el sakin. So you can either you're chayiv even with a shmir me'ula, or you're potter even with a shmir pechusa, or you're only potter with a shmir me'ula, but not you'll only be chayiv by a shmir pechusa, but you'll be potter by a shmir me'ula. Okay, there's three ways of looking at this. That was again TB4. So, fact Gemara. My time to Rameir. Why does Rameir say that when it comes to either a tam or a mu'id, just as long as there is a shmir pechusa, the din is that it doesn't matter. You're still going to be chayiv. Only when a shmir me'ula will you be potter. Ksavar stam shvarim la b'chesed shimer kaimi. Most animals not to be watched. V'yomer rachman tam nechayiv. So when the Torah says that a tam is chayiv, dini boy le shmir bechusa, because you need to at least do a shmir bechusa. Hadar rachman. Then the Torah says lo yishmerenu gami mu'id dini boy le shmir me'ula. Such an animal, a mu'id, needs even a greater level of shmira. V'yof negicha latam negicha mu'id. And he compares one negicha to the other through a gzer shava, which means, as Rashi, the boy nami tam shmir me'ula. So even though the pasuk sounds, on its simple reading, that a tam should only require shmira pechusa, and a mu'id will need a more intense shmira me'ula, but because of the gzer shava, so he holds that even a tam, together with a mu'id, the din is that a shmira pechusa you'll still be chayav. Rabbi Huda said no. Stam shvar b'chesed shimer kaimi. Most oxen are considered like they're guarded. Amar Rachman tam nisham dinei boy lishmir me'ula. The tam, therefore, it's ke'ilu like there's already some shmira already, and therefore when the pasuk mentions it must be talking about a shmir me'ula. Hadam Rachman v'lo yishmerenu gabi mu'ed den ha'abed le shmir me'ula. So again, when it comes to mu'ed, it also says shmira, which means the shmir me'ula. However, that's habi riboy achariboy bin riboy achariboy ilamayit. It's so one riboy after the other is actually an exclusion, like a double negative. So therefore, midakasel v'shmira me'ula. So by a mu'id, you only need a shmir pechusa, so you'd be potter according to Rabbi Huda, but a tam you still need me'ula, even though it's hard to understand. V'chi teima negicha tam negicha mu'id. What do you mean? It's the same goring. Hamid rachmana v'lo yishmerenu l'zeh v'lo acher. It says v'lo yishmerenu for this and not to others. Ahavamboy le'lalav. Im ken rachmana v'lo yishmer my v'lo yishmerenu l'zeh v'lo acher. It's coming to tell you for this one and not for the other one. So therefore, there's a distinction, according to him, between a tam and a mu'id, whether or not you're going to be chayiv on a shmira pechusa. Tanya, Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov, echad tam v'echad mu'id, sheshamer shmira pechusa potter. So Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov says, interestingly enough, another shita, that once there's a shmira pechusa, you're potter, whether it's a tam or a mu'id. My tam, a savak Rabbi Huda. He holds like Rabbi Huda, which was the second shita. All you need is the minor shmira. So we learn out a negicha to a tam, even for a tam, a negicha mu'id. And therefore the fact is we connect the two and therefore we say the din is just like a tam. So to my mu'id, that as long as there was a shmir pachusa, that's enough. Amarav, and you'll be potter. Amarav adavarava lo potter bihuda el tzad ha'adah shaboy. You're only pottering on the side of being a mu'id. Avol tzad tomus bimkoimoi medes. We said before, so you must pay the chatzi nezek for the tam part. That's what it's referring to. Says Rashi, Avol tzad tomos bimkoimoi medes. Since the tam needed a shmir me'ula, so at least you're chayav for the half. Okay. Amrav mu'id l'karen yamin in a mu'id l'karen smoil. If an animal is a mu'id using its right horn, that doesn't mean the left horn is a mu'id. So Amri, Ali b'daman. Who's that like? Eli b'darab meir di'amar echad taram echad mu'id shmir me'ula boy. He doesn't make any difference. If it's a tam or mu'id, it still needs a shmir me'ula. Eli b'Rabbi Yehuda ma'iri karen smoil. Afilu b'yamin nami ispeit tzad tomus. There's still a tzad tomus that you would at least have to pay for the chatzi nezek on the part of the tam. Ispeit tzad moedes. Amri olam Rabbi Yehuda v'los really the Rav Adabarava. He doesn't hold like him. V'halchi karmi. This is what he's saying. Ki ha'gav nehuda mishkachas beit tzad tomus moedes. In this situation, you can find tzad tomus and a mu'id. Hold on, let's look at Rashi. Tzad tomus b'mkoima medes v'yishtakach t'hachanami chatzi nezek mishon u'may nafkli rav. So he doesn't hold like him. El v'gamri potter bei Rabbi Yehuda. He holds that you're completely potter. Rashmi'in rav d'chi ha'gav d'mishkachas tzad tomus. When would you have to pay for the half? U'moedes b'chad toira with one ox. So inyan shmira. Im shamur shmir pachusa v'hizik b'keren yamin patul gamri. If you did a shmir pachusa and it damaged with the right horn, you're patur completely. V'im b'smol misham chatzi nezek. Okay, Aval back in the Gemara, but as we continue to mem Bava b'dalav mu'id l'gaimri. If this animal is completely a mu'id, lo b'shkachas beit tzad tomus klal. Says Rashi, did l'chayev chatzi nezek. Rather, you be patur by this one horn. Rabbi Lezer Omer ein lo shmira el sakin. Cool. Rabbi, my time, Rabbi Lezer, why is he so strict that even a shmir me'ula is not enough? The Amar Kra, lo yishmeren, you didn't guard it. Shuv ein lo shmira lezeh. Watching doesn't help anymore. Armalei Abai el miyada dechsev lo yechasenu, not to cover it. So what does that mean? Nami shuv ein lo kisui lezeh. There's no more covering. It's true, but not kisahu karoi. If you covered it properly, but naflo soichai, sure, and then all of a sudden an ox falls into it, o chamor, or a donkey falls into it, umeis potter. El omer baya hainu tam Rabbi Lezer. Why shouldn't you have a wild animal in your house? Have a bad ladder. So basically he's saying, says Rashi, Hachanami hai lo yishmerenu lo yakimenuhu. It doesn't mean, it means that you shouldn't keep it in your house. This is an animal that you should not keep in your house. It says Taisus el time Rabbi Lezer g'nasanya v'yishlam et bor islay tekanta tfei. There's a more of a takana kish mechasenu kiroi mishor nachon. It's easier to cover up a hole than trying to watch an animal that is wild and is goring. Question 13. Shamur habal mashor shmir ma'ul v'hizik he'im chayev. So it was a shmir ma'ula. So for a mu'id, it's a machlokas, because one holds that when it comes to a mu'id, you are taka potter, and the other one holds it's only by, or the other one says you're chayev. One kind tam potter. And what does it mean when he says the statement, Eno shmira el sakin? That's referring dafka to a shor hamuid. But maybe a shor tam, his din wouldn't say that. It's only the shmir ma'ula doesn't help by a muid. Adkan.